Happy Friday. How's everybody doing today? Thanks so much for the kind words, Clayton. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I've got a dishwasher running in the background, so it's a little noisy here in the house today. Hey, Benjamin. Low voice. Hey, O'Donnell. So we're gonna dive right in here today. Got quite a few people who submitted their design portfolios for feedback, so I thought I'd pull up some more and take a look. I did this, I think, last week, and it went really well, so I thought I'd try it again today, just taking a look at portfolios and giving my honest feedback. So if you'd like your portfolio reviewed, leave a comment in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just gonna dive in and start reviewing. So let me pull up a portfolio here, 1 second. Hannah, I don't know if you're on the live stream yet, but we're gonna pull up your portfolio and take a look. So here we go. So this is Hannah's portfolio. She sent it to me via LinkedIn. So thanks for sending it over, Hannah. It's always really hard, I think. Hannah's here. Hey, Hannah. It's always really hard, I think, to share anything, let alone a portfolio of work for feedback, especially in like a public setting where thousands of people might see it. So thanks for sharing. Let's take a look. I'll dive right in. I have not looked at this yet, but let's see here. So we've got Hannah. I like this little image up here. Would prefer to see you, honestly, like a personal picture if you feel comfortable sharing that, but this is like a nice little color touch. Personal fan of the emojis, so that's cool. Plushie collector, interesting detail that you have there. Previously tinkered thoughtful experiences in digital health and B2B space, looking for hands-on designer who can think systematically and visually. Let's chat. So I want to say that right away. I love this little intro. I think it's pretty straightforward. It gives us like the specific space you're interested in, although B2B is a little vague. Hey, Nora. The one thing that kind of threw me off right away with this, Hannah, was this statement here. I don't know if you can kind of see this too well. Let me zoom in here. Looking for a hands-on designer. When I first started reading this, my initial reaction was, you're looking for a designer? Like you're hiring a designer? Of course, you know, as I read that, that's not the case here. But maybe look at rewording this a little bit to be clearer that you are open to opportunities. All right, let's move on here. So I see 3 case studies here. Also, I just noticed this massive accessibility control down here. That's pretty cool. I like that. And then there's some interesting things going on here, Hannah. The first is you've got this about link up in the top left, and you've got LinkedIn in the top right. It just feels a little bit all over the place. I'm very curious to see what happens when I go into one of these projects. So let's see. What I usually do when I look at the projects is I want to make sure I get a sense of all of the work that this designer is presenting at the first. So I'll kind of look at each of these thumbnails and the titles. Should favor join the chatbot revolution. How we increased onboarding conversion by, that's pretty cool. Leveling up the core experience and more. So the one thing that interests me is this headline here in this middle one. Metrics are always really critical and important, and I love this metric call out here. Increasing onboarding conversion by 142% is really great. What surprises me though is like you have a stock photo here, or what appears to be a stock photo, instead of your work. So the title is captivating to me, but the image is not. Whereas these other two, if I'm looking to hire you or understand you as a designer, these other 2 images give me a real quick snapshot of kind of the work you've done, whereas this middle one doesn't, and yet it's got the most captivating title. So I'm actually going to dive into this middle one and take a look. Okay, so now you've got the home link in the top left instead of an about link. That's a little interesting. Enjoy. Oh, that's cool. It's like a social media thing. Why do you have that? It's interesting. I don't know how to feel about that one. Okay, let's dive in. How might we build trust with new patients via onboarding? How can we boost conversion after a rebrand? interesting prompts. Let's keep going. Let's find some answers. Okay, this is a fun little image here. Looks like some 3D mock-up of some designs. I said this before. I'm going to say it probably a million times while I'm doing portfolio reviews. These kind of images where you've got like stylized presentations of your work, really awesome to have as like an overview image here, like at the top of your project. In fact, for you, Hannah, you can just use this same image in replace of the one you already have, and it'd be great. So it's great to do that. However, as I go through this case study, I really hope there's not a lot of these, what we call Chrome, the Chrome around the device, like a browser, or in this case, the device itself. I don't want to see that. I want to see your work. These kind of images are really fun and give us some context on what you've designed, but it makes it really hard to see the design details. And I'm not trying to hire you to say, can you get creative with how you place work inside of a case here, a device. I want to see what you do as a designer. So that's what we want to see here. But let's keep going. I'm kind of ranting here. After the Pill Club rebranded to Favor, onboarding conversions plummeted. Okay, that's an awesome start. I'm curious what happens next. So you've done a good job of kind of building curiosity, making me want to understand the story and the narrative that we're going to go through here. You were the only designer. And then, okay, interesting. You give a little context on the team's role here, which is fine. Just try not to do too much of this in your portfolio because I'm not interviewing your team. I don't care about your team. I care about you. So I only care about your team on a project in so much as it tells me about you, right? Hey, Lucy, thanks for joining. So you've got this other photo here. I think these photos are nice, but one thing I always tell designers too is be careful in showing photos or stock photos or something without explicit descriptions in them, because for this example, I right away might try to say as a hiring manager or someone looking at your portfolio, did you design this packaging? Is that like something you're trying to show? It's not clear. Like it just doesn't make sense to me why you have this stock photo here. It's to set a mood, I think, and to like help your story, which is great. But without the context, it's really hard to understand. Like, am I supposed to be looking at this shirt? Did you design that shirt? Like, why is this massive photo here? I want to see your work, right? So I'm just reading this text now. So Hannah, I want to say right away, you're doing some really awesome stuff in this case study. I've only looked at one yet so far, and we haven't even really gotten to the work yet. But your story is interesting, and I think you've done a really good job in how you've set this up, in my opinion. You've got like these great prompts up here, which they're not super strong, but they're interesting, and they make me want to know kind of some answers here, right? You then start off with a very brief summary of the context, the situation that you found yourself in for this project. And that's exactly what I want to have in a case study, right? It's also extremely concise. You've done a really great job of writing this, I think, so far. Again, the my team's role part, I'm not really sure how much you need that. If as a hiring manager, if I were looking at your portfolio, I honestly would skip over this. It just doesn't mean anything to me personally. And then you come down here and you're describing like your journey. And I say this all the time, like I want to hear your journey of discovery throughout this project, because that's what's going to tell me more about you as a designer, how you navigate problems, what you do when you're assigned a project, what you do when you're the only designer. So you're using a lot of I statements and you're kind of giving me context on why you use that tool and why you took that step. So you've done a really good job on that, I think, so far. So let's see here. You've got this like onboarding funnel image, which I don't know if you need this either. Like it's 4 steps. It's not super complicated. You can get rid of this image if you want to. I don't think it adds too much here. It's just gonna be something to skip over. This other image, however, down here, which I'm looking here. Wait, what? Oh, I didn't realize this is interactive. So this looks like a whimsical embed, and this is a great mapping. This is such an interesting thing to see. I think what I'm missing here from your story, Hannah, is, you know, how did you feel going into this? Because this like initial onboarding funnel with 4 sections, super simple. Like I said, you don't really need to have this image, but what you can do in your story here is you can say, on the face of things, here's how I and the team I worked with thought about onboarding. You create an account, you enter some basic info, medical history, and you check out. Boom, easy, right? And then in your story, whether you're presenting this or talking about it, Then you go to this much more complex map, and you should say as part of your story, my initial assumption here about how simple this would be was not true. And I learned as a designer that even the most simplistic flows often have edge cases or pathways that we have to optimize for, or situations that I wasn't aware of. And now I'm visualizing this contrast between my assumption as a designer and the reality that I had to face. That'd be an excellent thing to communicate here, and it really adds value to these kind of mappings. If that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions about that in the chat at all. So I'm looking through this mapping, and there's a few things that I see here that are really interesting. So right away, it's not clear to me if this is a mapping of the existing workflow, if this is the existing product, or if this is designs you kind of built or worked on. So I'm not really sure what I'm looking at here. If I scroll up, does it say anything? No, it just says we used Whimsical Board to communicate with effectively with stakeholders, which is fine, but like, who built this? Who put this mapping? And is this, again, existing? Is this the existing workflow? Is this a new workflow? There's a lot here. I'm not sure the interactive part really matters too much. I just think if you focus on the story a little bit more, saying, you know, I built this, or I built this map with my team. You can say something about how your initial assumption, again, was X. And then as you went through the project, you learned Y. That would be an excellent thing to kind of call out here. So I would really encourage you to pursue that perspective here. Let's keep going. Let's do a sanity check. I don't know what that title means, but okay. Next, I worked closely with my product manager and director of customer support. I'm laughing because you've got like this bolded qualitative user testing. That's awesome. I think that's just a really good call out, that you're bolding the key skills that you want to have here. And I don't know if you've like been part of Shape or something, but this is really great how you're kind of formatting this. Again, the one thing I'm going to come back to with your story here is focus again on your personal journey, your personal feeling, your personal understanding. You say here, you know, there was a hunch that the team had about the problem. You decided to conduct qualitative research. Here I want to hear the kind of things like, because I'd done this research before, I decided to do it in this way, or someone on the team mentioned that we should consider doing qualitative research, so I worked with a researcher or someone to come up with a script, come up with these goals, all of those kind of things. I want to hear, again, your personal perspective here. Then when I come down here, you've got a screenshot of user testing. I love this. This is fantastic. The reason I love this is because you're not just telling me that you did qualitative user testing, and that usually what you see designers do in their portfolio is they'll say, yeah, we did research, and here's like a chart of the data, or here's like just a summary, here's a quote that I got. But when you show the research, like here's you, I'm not sure if there's another person on the call, unfortunately, so I can't really see that, but like you've got a screen of someone walking through your app, and you're there on the research. So this is great. I love this kind of stuff. And your specific call out to your listening phase. This is great, Hannah. This is such a good case study. I want to skip over some of this stuff just for the sake of time and try to get to more of the actual work. Because I think you're doing a really good job of describing the problem and your process, the context. Looks like you've got some call outs from the research here, which is really cool. You presented research findings and got some good feedback. That's awesome. Love the fact that you did that. So here again, you're saying after X happened, we did Y. Elaborate just a teeny bit more here in your case study if you can. In fact, I would say like find a way to reword this section, Hannah. And instead of just saying, here's what happened next, here's what happened next, here's what happened next, tell me like what your mindset was and how you were feeling and what iterations you tried as you go into this kind of 3-hour workshop that you collaborated with your project manager on. Was that like your project manager's proposal, or did you have alternate ideas that you could try? Like what happened here? That's really what I want to know as a hiring manager. It looks like you've got this like exercise going on here. Pretty cool. Okay, so you did this workshop as the team. You started strategizing. Okay, and now you've got some new improvements based on what you learned. It looks like all I'm interpreting from this image right here, by the way, which is an image of 3 phones, some sticky notes, and some arrows. All I'm interpreting this as is you took this part of the workflow and added this little helper text so people could better understand what they're doing or how to answer questions properly, it seems. For what it's worth, I'm not reading these sticky notes in this image. Someone might, but I'm going to preserve important text in a case study for text. And this is a common problem. We might see a portfolio like this today. Do not have screenshots of text in your case study. It's really hard to read that stuff. It doesn't scale very well. It's not selectable. I can't Command F it. It's all over the place. So I think for this kind of image, just get rid of the pink notes and make sure your story talks to the points you want to talk to, I think. Okay, you've got some stuff here about zip code verification. What is this numbering? I just saw number 2 on that headline. So these are the prioritization of low effort, high impact items. The first was the visual foundation. Okay, that makes sense. And then changing zip. Okay, I kind of got lost in these subheaders for what it's worth. I don't know if you necessarily need those numbers. See, now I'm getting a little all over the place because you've got like strategizing the launch, which is like a subhead for the section you have here, explains what we're about to go into as a reader. But then you use the exact same header for what appears to be like a summary or introduction for the next section. I don't know. I would just reevaluate your kind of heading treatment here, and your prioritization, your hierarchy here. Hannah, it's like getting a little confusing for the story. Like you probably don't need this much complexity. Okay, but like I said, I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to actually scroll way down here. Okay, you've got some more improvements here. I see. Proper nouns, that's cool. Separate account creation. I love this long screen here. Hilarious. Okay, so here's what's interesting to me about this case study. Again, I think the story overall started really strong. I feel like we kind of lost momentum a little bit through it. And part of the reason for that is, again, I feel like I'm losing your story, your narrative, what you grew, or how you grew, and kind of what you were doing throughout the project. I want you to focus on that in your story. That's the thing that matters most. Not the business, not even how the business operates. It's you and your story as you went through this project. Only give context on the business in so much as it helps give light on kind of your situation, right? The other thing, like I mentioned very earlier in this live stream, is you're using these device kind of layouts here, and it's okay here because I think that you're just using them as like slabs. It's not really distracting too much, but I want to see the design details in your work, and I want to just really focus on the design details and not how you're presenting them in this case study. So I'd much rather see like a grid of screenshots with no arrows and no text and all those things than what you're presenting now. I don't think you need to overthink this one. But it could be really helpful to focus just on your design work and not have all these images that have multiple devices and screens and sticky notes. So when I click on those things, like your design is such a small part of this large image, right? And it should be the other way around. It should be the bulk of it. So overall, I take away this was a relatively small growth project, really interesting in kind of how you presented it. I liked some of these iterations. But that's the other thing that I'm really missing here that I often see in design portfolios is I want to see a little bit more iteration. I want to see a little bit more of your exploration because, sorry, let me reword that. That's not entirely true. So here's the thing. When you have a case study like this, and Hannah's done a great job of walking us through how to tell an authentic story, not just like a research, ideation, concept, testing, shipping story, that's boring. I want to hear what really happened. How did you actually go through this experience? And when you do that, there's two things you need to do, or one of two things. One is you need to tell the other person when you kind of branched out or when you did explorations. I want to see sketches. I want to see wireframes. I want to see multiple images of a similar screen that you explored. And you don't need to focus a lot on it, but you need to show that work. The second of the two things you could do is if you're not going to show that work, you don't have the screens or something, you need to very clearly in big letters explain why you're not showing more of that iteration or why you didn't do that iteration, which is okay. But it's such a missing piece of these kind of portfolios where it goes like, this is one of the most interesting things up here for me in this case study we're looking at now, where Hannah goes from this crazy mapped out experience to what it seems like just solutions right away. And I want to see more of like how this design system was used or the sketches for these things. It's okay if you don't do sketches, but I want to understand like how you actually maneuvered throughout this process. Do you have a screenshot of your Figma file that I could see? Like that would add a lot to the story as well. I'm going to quickly go back to the home now for one other case study because this is just such interesting work. This one's about chatbots. Okay. The one, I love this header because it's a question, and questions always, make you interested in what's happening. The one problem is I don't know what favor is, right? Should favor join the chatbot revolution? You could reword this really simply to just describe briefly what favor is. I suspect we'll probably get an answer down here. No, not really. The Pill Club, I don't know what that is either. But what I would say here is, what is favor? Basically just replace the word here. It's like a startup, healthcare startup. So it's your header could be, should this healthcare startup join the chatbot revolution or something like that. Just get a little bit clearer. And then I love your little angel emoji with the short answer is no. Keep reading to find out how I helped favor its health. Oh, look, you did say it right here. I skipped over it. This is great. This is, again, a fantastic introduction. You've really done a good job, I think, with a lot of your story. I can see right away this is the same brand as the previous case study. I think that's okay. If you are a designer who doesn't have a lot of broad experience, or you only worked on one company with multiple projects or things, it's totally okay to have a case study or a portfolio, with multiple case studies from one business. That's totally great. The inverse of that is something you'll see in more experienced designers who will have one case study on their portfolio per company or business, and that one case study is all of the work they've done or the work that they're proud of. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm looking here. This is like the chat interface looks like maybe that the designer built here. It's funny because I know right away the answer is no to the question, should chatbots be part of the experience? And yet the screenshots are of a chatbot. So what's happening there? I'm very curious. Oops. Okay. So you've got this like user segments thing. Again, like what I said earlier, don't have text in an image. It's really hard. It doesn't scale. If I'm a hiring manager on the go and using my phone, I can't read this text. It's gonna just, I'm not gonna care, right? Use images for images, use text for text. It looks like this image is trying to break down two of the key user segments for the company. And what I'm curious about here, yeah, okay, here it is. Existing research from user testing. I'm not sure how strong this image and even this section really is for your story, Hannah. If you're telling me too much about the business or too much about the company or the situation you found yourself in, like I'm just gonna skip over that, right? Because again, I'm not hiring the business, I'm hiring you. So did you build this image? If you did that, let me know that. You built that image from existing user research. That's great. You built an image to help others at the company understand something. That's a pretty powerful thing. If you didn't build this image, I want stronger clarity around why you felt it's worth including here. You start this next section by saying right off the bat, the head of design and I were skeptical. That's great. That's the kind of stuff that I was saying earlier. Okay, so you and the head of design were aligned on this, and you find yourself asking some questions about the idea. So let's see here. You listed out pros and cons, always good. Again, here it's an image of text. You talk about how you propose to the team that chatbots may be appealing, reduce risk, okay, by personalized birth control. Interesting. Okay, this is a great story. And one thing, I mentioned this earlier, but you all should be looking at this portfolio. It's hannahluc.com, hannahluc.com. She's done just an exceptional job. Like, look how short this is. This is all the text that you need to understand what happened before and what happened next, right? Just a fantastic job here. Because hiring managers, recruiters, we're not going to read all of the text you have on these case studies, no matter what. Like, we just don't have time. But interesting enough case studies will make us really want to engage more than if it's a ton of text that's boring. It's not about you. It's not really a coherent story. So this is a good example, I think. Okay, so some research was done. I see that. Scrolling down here, got some screenshots of the research. This is the one exception to what I was saying previously around images of text. If you're gonna have a screenshot of like your research findings or research preparation doc or research plan doc or some kind of documentation, screenshots of documents are great. I think that's totally okay. It helps us, again, it gives evidence that this was real work that really happened, and here's some screenshots of that, of how it took shape. That's fantastic. In fact, I would love to see more real life screenshots of documentation and process and things. Don't overdo it, but yeah. So then you kind of lose me here, Hannah. Again, I think we're reaching the same thing that we did last time, where you get to a certain point in your case study and it just kind of fizzles out a little bit. So you're saying making lemonade. I'm not really sure how to interpret that. I feel like you could use a much stronger headline here and it would make the story more captivating. So if I'm like quickly skimming this and I'm just like looking at your headlines, I need to know what this is going to mean, if that makes sense. Cool. Let's keep going. Okay. Current state, very clearly labeled. Click this thing, get the help. Yep. Then you do an exploration. And here again, I think I'm picking this up from looking at these multiple case studies, which is, again, something that hire managers will often do, is you'll look at multiple case studies to understand how someone really, really works. That's the benefit of having multiple case studies, is you're not just saying, here's one project I worked on, maybe I got lucky on it. Instead, here you're saying, I've worked on multiple case studies, I've done multiple projects. They may be similar in some ways, different in others. As a hiring manager, I want to know those differences. I want to know those similarities. I think that's really important here to understand like how you navigate. So here what you did is you basically did the research and then dove right into explorations, like you said earlier in the story. What I'm not clear on is if you did any sort of, again, wireframing, or did you use a design system? I think that's the thing I'm picking up here, is there were some existing components from your team and your job was to say, how can we conceptualize these in a way that helps users? That's what I'm picking up from this. If that's not true, you need to kind of re-explore how you're presenting these case studies. If it is true, great job, because I'm picking that signal up here. Okay, so you did a bunch of iterations. Looks like 3 iterations you show here. One with the avatar on the top right, one with it floating, and then the other one being like a forced step or contextual, as you call it. I'm very curious what happened with these. You decided to do prototyping to test with users. Fantastic. I love the fact you're showing an animation here. I mentioned it in the last live stream. I'll say it here again. Anytime you show animated videos or GIFs or something that shows the interaction flow, that's reinforcing that you're an interaction designer, that you can think through the interactions. When the user clicks on this thing, what's going to happen? Where will these elements come from? Where will the other ones go? How will a user know how to navigate? So this is pretty good. Again, you've got this like building bridges header. I don't know what that means. I'm not even going to like, why should I read this section? Essentially is what this headline should be answering, and it's not doing that for me here. So just something to keep in mind. Then you've got some learnings. This is cool. I love learnings. It looks like this is an image. That makes me sad. But you do have learnings, and I think learnings are really great in a portfolio case study, primarily because when you reflect on work experience, even if it's been some time after the work, you show a little bit of self-awareness in that you can kind of reflect and say, well, here's what I did really well, and here's where I could have done things better, and here's like an insight that I learned from the project. With that said, I don't really think that that's what I'm looking at here now that I spend more time looking at it. This is learnings from the research. This isn't even your learnings, right? So what you did is you did the prototyping, you did some research on it. I don't know, again, building bridges thing. Okay, you invited them. This is all that this entire section needs to say, Hannah, is to increase empathy, credibility, and buy-in. I invited stakeholders to the sessions to observe. Like, that's it. You don't need anything else here, right? So then you got these learnings from it, and I think that's fine. Again, I would change this to text. I would change the title to something like the research findings or outcomes or something, just so it's a little bit clearer. Then you did a pivot, okay. Not really sure. You've got this screenshot of the site footer with blog and FAQ highlighted. So here's what I'm going to say right now for this point in the review. You'll notice that I'm kind of skipping over a lot of text. I'll read some of it, but I'll kind of skip over much of it. That's just a realistic scenario. Like I said earlier, there are absolutely companies and people who will take time to read these case studies in depth, particularly if you're a strong designer or they're really interested in you, or you've just done a great job storytelling. They're going to read pretty much all of this. But the vast majority, in my experience, they're going to skim. And the things that they're going to skim are images and headlines primarily. And the headlines can serve as a great kind of anchor, which, I think for those who know HTML, it's like an old school, it's like anchor link. It's an anchor in the page, meaning here's kind of where I'm at in the journey. And if all you're doing as a recruiter or hiring manager is skimming someone's portfolio, if you can get a sense for what they went through and what they did through just the headlines, that's fantastic. And then if you have questions or if there's something more interesting, then you'll read the additional text. And I think, again, there's a pretty good job here, just enough text to give the story, the narrative. It's the headlines that are kind of losing me. And then on top of the headlines, you've got graphics that aren't really super helpful. So here, outside of the story, I'm not sure what this screenshot of the footer, it just doesn't matter too much. It's not really setting the context for me. Even with the contextual knowledge that you have above, sharing about, users didn't really click on these things. Like, we were talking about chatbots, you did some research, and then, okay, you asked yourself if a conversational resource center would be better than the existing education content. Like, that's all you need to say. You don't really need any of this other text. Change that headline to explain that, and now the screenshot makes sense, right? So I hope that is helpful at all. I like your train of thought, by the way. I think you did some really interesting things here, in that you went through research, you did prototyping, you got some feedback on it. Then you went and said, okay, well, what if we took this chatbot approach and used it to replace some of these other aspects of our website, which apparently weren't getting a lot of traction anyway. Great common thought. So I think that thinking's really good. I would love to see it called out a little bit more here, more clearly. Then you've got this screenshot kind of parallaxed behind the page without any kind of context. I'm not sure if this was the next step you took, or if this is just a teaser. I don't know what this image is. Is this the existing resource center? I don't know what it is. It's not helpful. Then you break down kind of what you think a resource hub is, which is interesting. I would be very curious, how you came up with this. How did you research these kind of resource hubs? Have you built one before? Again, that's the kind of context I want to know. Is you had a great hunch. What did you do with it next? It's not super clear to me. If I come down here, it says that you presented that idea to leadership. Okay. I'm just reading this. So got really positive signal from leadership, but again, I feel like it's just such a huge gap here in your story. I don't really know what happened between the research, your theory, and then you presented what exactly, just the idea, or did you do designs? It's not super clear to me. Let's come down here. Another prototype, love it, fantastic. I'm looking at some of the design details in some of this animation here, this prototype. Okay, so I think what I've got from this case study is chatbots don't really work. For personal reasons, I kind of already have explored that. I know that. So the pivot to a kind of a resource guide, improving that makes a ton of sense. You got buy-in for it. I saw that you got the project was downsized, which is great to call that out. Thank you for calling that attention to that. I'm very curious if you have personal learnings down here. It could be in this results section. There's just a quick scan and I'm not seeing it, so that's okay. But this is good. I think this is overall a strong case study. A few small areas where you can fine tune the headers, clean up some of the images, get rid of some of these things. Maybe just reread through your story. If I were you, a great hunch, a great kind of like pro tip that I'll recommend for any designer building a case study, write your case study on your website or in a text document or something. Write the case study first with no images. Just write the story and read it, or ask someone else to read it for you and see if it makes sense. See if it's a linear, authentic, true story to what happened. Then go back and try to find the appropriate imagery for your story for various parts of it. And as you do that, you'll learn there's areas you can remove from the story, areas you can add. Different images will speak to you stronger than others. But just reread your story, right? Read it end to end. See how much time it takes. See if it makes sense. See if it really conveys what you want to convey about your skills and your experience. And that's going to create a really strong case study. Don't just like have a bunch of images and kind of mishmash them together. Really try to write it out first. Cool. Well, thanks again for sharing this, Hannah. I thought this was really, really great portfolio overall. Really some small things that I think you could do to improve it. But this is great. Nice work. We're going to take another look at a different one now. Also, as we go through this, remember, you can ask questions in the chat about anything. I just wanted to hang out and do some portfolio reviews. So if you're on live stream, say hello. Let me know what's going on. Otherwise, we'll pull up the next portfolio here. Fallon. I don't know if you're on the live stream. I don't think I saw your name, but thanks for sending over your portfolio as well. Really, really excited to dive into this. Cool. So, hello, I'm Fallon, a New York-based UX designer. Iteration is my superpower. Okay. Right away, I'm going to say, I love it when this happens. Hey, Fallon. I love it when this happens, where a designer says, like, I love research. Or, iteration is my superpower. Here's the trick. If as I go through your portfolio, I don't see a ton of iteration, you've lost my trust. So if this is your superpower, you better have a lot of iteration in your portfolio. Let's take a look and see if that's the case. I will say right away, you've got kind of some funky links going on up here. I'm not really sure, like there's bold and then all caps. Fallon's in the chat saying, no, wait, don't worry about it. So yeah, maybe look at what's going on with these links. Like, I don't know why these ones are capitalized and these ones aren't. And you've got these like kind of, you've got these kind of like animation. It's pretty jarring here. I would cut this, like change the color, keep the border underline animation. But don't change the font weight. Don't make some of these like randomly caps. This is like such a nitpicky thing, but you're a designer. These are the kind of nitpicky things that a hiring manager or a recruiter will probably look at. So yeah, Teddy, go ahead and ask your question. Okay, let's keep going. Like I said, I'm gonna skim through some of these projects. Bam, Books Are Magic, a bookseller. Interesting. Food Swing, plant-based food app. Okay, you've got 2 projects on here. That's good. I will say, Fallon, something you can do that a lot of designers should be doing more of is, instead of saying like what the project is here in this thumbnail, and I think this is an image, right? Yeah, I'd like to see this as text for what it's worth. Like if the image doesn't load, I still need to be able to see what this is. So maybe pull out a text. But instead of saying Books Are Magic, a bookseller, try to summarize the narrative of this case study. What did you learn? What was really hard for you, or what are you most proud of in this work? Summarize that here, because as a hiring manager, that's the thing that's going to interest me, right? Like I don't care about a plant-based food app. Like that means nothing to me. I'm trying to hire a designer. I'm not interested in looking for a food app. So try to find a good way to do that. I think looking at the previous portfolio we just did, I think Hannah did a pretty good job of this actually, where she's got like these nice prompts. Leveling up the core experience and more. That's okay. How we increased onboarding conversion by 142% at Favor. That's a great headline. Should Favor join the chatbot revolution? Another good one. So consider that for your subtext here. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the Books Are Magic case study. Okay. Whoa, what just happened here? Okay, nothing. Okay, so, whoa, Oh, I see. Uh-oh. Is this... I think this whole case study is just images, right? There's no text. Okay. It's not the end of the world. If you have the time, especially if you're looking for work, you got to redo this. You need to build this in text. It needs to be something that people can scan, and then most importantly, that works on mobile. Like if we change this to mobile, which again is not a major thing, but your entire project is like almost unreadable. I can't see any of your work. You need to probably you need to explore redoing this. You can use probably all the same text, but just make it text with your screenshots. Use Webflow, use Squarespace. I think even Dribbble has some great new case study stuff here. I think Behance supports it. Don't just do stacked images. It's going to be a pain for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into some of those in a second. Okay, so this is... sorry, I'm going to answer a question from the chat first real quick. Let's see here. So Teddy asks, for people who are relatively more senior or even at staff or principal level, do they still do their portfolios with detailed case studies? Yeah, not always. No, not always, but yes, they should still have a portfolio of case studies. Let's pull up mine real quickly, which sometimes I show in the live streams. I'm working on updating this right now. It's a freaking mess, but yeah, I always maintain case studies. In fact, literally today I'm writing a new case study for Shape, my product platform that I built for designers. But yeah, you should absolutely have case studies that are, drawn out. Here's one of mine that I did for Lyft. I'm just going to quickly skim through it. Like, why would you not have this? And I think part of the challenge for more senior designers is, like, what do you write about? What do you include in your case studies? Because you probably could talk about a lot of things. What kind of work do you show? If you've done various types of projects and initiatives, if you worked at a lot of different places, how do you focus that? How do you find time for those things? Do recruiters really care in more experienced designers? And the answer to all those questions is yes, but in my personal opinion, I'm surprised when designers don't have case studies or a portfolio. Like, in my opinion, if you're a designer and you're building things, you should be thinking about your process, thinking about the outcomes, thinking about what happens as you design and deliver things. And if you're not doing that, it's okay. Some designers just don't do that, but it's hard to grow. It's hard to really know what your strengths are. It's hard to build your career if you're not thinking about your work. And if you're thinking about your work, you should also be doing things like screenshotting it, doing presentations. Personally, I maintain a work journal. So at the end of every work day, I take a screenshot or two from that work that day, write down a few sentences about that work, and that becomes like a journal for me. And later on, as you have those folders of documents and things or a work journal, then you can just translate that into a case study. Like, it's pretty easy once you've already kind of done that reflection and you've built all those screenshots. So in my opinion, one of the best things that any designer can do is think about their work, document it, reflect on it, and then translate it to a way that you can share with other people, particularly if you're looking for a job. There's a ton more behind that, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to focus on that. Let's go back to Fallon's portfolio here. So what I was saying is don't just use images for your portfolio. It's really hard to see. I do love this like nice preview header image up here. Fallon, you've done a beautiful job with this. This is what I was saying about having like a nice presentation for the project. Really, really good. There's another question here real quickly. It says, if you're seeking UX engineer roles, thoughts on case studies for that? There's so much to tackle, whether it's design or development. Yeah, I think it's still really great. Look, here's the thing. If you're someone who builds products or builds services or builds something that other people have to interact with, and you want to get a job doing that, or if you want to change jobs, it's really helpful to have artifacts you can point to so people can understand not only what you did, but how you did it. That's what people will hire you for, right? No one's going to go hire someone just because they worked at Google. It just doesn't work that way. They hire someone who worked at Google who also can talk about how they work, who can elaborate on their process and how they overcome challenges and innovate in problem space and those things. If you've got a ton of work, like if you're a staff level designer and you've got a ton of things to talk about, you need to prioritize the things that are aligned with your career goals. If you don't have those, you need to get those. And that align with, you need to pick projects and work that aligns with where you want to go, right? What kind of jobs are you looking at? There's a lot of very, very different roles out there today. You can prioritize and then go find those jobs. And if your portfolio shows work that mirrors what these job descriptions entail, you're going to be a better fit, right? Yeah. Okay. Last one that I promised found. We'll get back to this and we'll end on that on your portfolio. But the last question here in the chat is, how do you decide what to keep or eliminate in your case studies when 10 different hiring managers will give you 10 different opinions of what they're looking for in case studies? I love this question. It happens all the time. People are so confused about case studies and portfolios and resumes today. It's literally why I decided to build Shape. It's because there's so much information. And if you're getting a lot of conflicting information, I'll say kind of two things on this. The first thing is pay really close attention to who you listen to, including me saying this right now. Learn about them, their background, what they're looking for, why they're doing what they're doing, why they're telling you what they're telling you. In some cases, it may not be a good fit for you. If someone tells you you need your portfolio to look like X, but you're not interested in joining the kind of company that they run, or you're not really sure about it, you don't have to listen to them. Just don't, right? Pay really close attention to who's giving you the information. And then the second thing is get help from people who are not hiring. This is literally why I'm doing these live design portfolio reviews is I want to help designers understand what hiring managers mean when they say, I want to see your process. Because what will happen when, if you're like interviewing and a recruiter says, hey, we don't like your portfolio. We didn't understand your process. You need to show more process. Designers will often say, okay, let me go show the design process. Let me go explain it because clearly this recruiter doesn't understand it or this hiring manager doesn't understand it. And the reality is the recruiter or hiring manager, they don't have time to kind of walk you through and help you understand what they're saying. They're doing hundreds of interviews. They don't have time to explain it to you. So they'll just say, let me see more process. Or they'll say, there's too much information on this page. Or they'll say, there's not enough information on this page. And what they're really trying to say is, holistically, I'm not understanding who you are as a designer, right? And so that's why I kind of have the approach of scrap the format that so many designers have been spoon-fed. Don't worry too much about what people are asking for or say they want. Be a designer. Think about the end user's goal here. What is their goal? If I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking at Fallon's portfolio here today, what I want to know is not his design process following like what framework does he use. I don't really care about the tools he used. I care about how he identifies problems. I care about what happens when he gets stuck on a problem. How does he work with others? How does he communicate ideas to others that he works with? And then as he completes his design work, what does he reflect on? What would he do differently? That's the stuff. Like, that's it. If you can convey that stuff really well in a portfolio case study, that's it. Like, I'm here to learn about you. And if you make it hard for me, if you make it confusing, if you don't give me enough information about yourself and your journey, if you focus too much on the context and setting the stage, like I just don't have time to look into that stuff, right? So that's what pretty much all these recruiters and hiring managers mean when they say, there's too much here, there's too little here. What they're really saying is this isn't optimal, I think. Okay, so I want to go here. We've got just a few minutes left, and I want to make it through one case study. The biggest thing here that just really throwing me off is the fact this is all images. I want to select stuff here, but I can't. So I'll just kind of hover over it. Hopefully that's good. So things like where, what, why, when, like don't include this stuff in your portfolio case studies, please. I just don't care. What I really, really want to know are in this setting is the why. The fact that this is a UX course prompt is important, right? This isn't a real project, which means the constraints, the collaboration, it's not as real as you get in a different project. So that does matter. But the rest of the stuff, like I'm just going to skip over. I don't care. These keywords up here, they're interesting, but also like it's keywords that are in an image. So I'm not really sure what purpose this serves anyway. It's not like for SEO. I'm not really sure what that is. Then you've got this image here. I want to click on it to see some of these design details, but I can't because then the entire image will zoom. So I'm going to skip over it. I'm actually looking at some of the design details real quickly. And I will say like this is a pretty aesthetically pleasing design, what I can see here. So I'm kind of eager to dive in. Okay, So this, I can see this is from a Google UX design course. Fallon, you're doing something weird with the typography here again, where you've got like, I think this entire section is almost all in bold. It's hard for me to know what's most important or what I should pay attention to when I've got 1 minute to scan your portfolio. It's hard to know when everything's bold. So clean that up. Only bold like specific keywords that you really want me to see or pay attention to. Okay, so you actually decided to create an app for an existing customer. That's interesting. I want to come down here and see if you went and talked to the business, because that would have been next level, is having this kind of fabricated project that you conducted real research on. You talked to 25 participants, 19 were survey, 6 were interviews. That's great. That's a cool research methodology. I think it's fine. You also explain here why you did it, so that's good. Okay, so I just saw in the chat that you said you did try to talk to this business. You never got a response. That's okay. I would actually include that you went out and you tried to engage with them about this if you can. It's okay that they didn't respond. That's understandable. It's not negative on them. But just a quick note that you say, like, I did try to engage with them. I wanted to make this like a really fun project and I just never heard back, and then move on, right? And that goes back to what I've said time and time again here. I want to hear your journey, your experience going through this. So tell me, like, why did you decide on 25 participants for the research? What kind of research did you do? Why did you decide on a survey? How did you pick the questions for the survey? When you did the interviews, how did you come up with that research guide? Who helped you? What was really hard for you about that, if anything? What did you enjoy? Tell me that stuff. If I'm going to hire you as a designer, I need to know how you pick research and if you enjoy it or not. It's okay either way. It just tells me more about you. Then you did a competitive analysis. Goodreads and thrift books. Okay, that's cool. You've got like an interesting breakdown here. It looks like you did a little bit of a SWOT analysis, which is, that's fine. You looked at the competitor reviews. That's good. You also looked at Barnes & Noble. One of the things that is missing here, you already know what I'm going to say. I can't see any of these screenshots. Like, I can't see any of the work. I can't really, like, you've got some interesting graphics that are like flying around the screen here, some quotes and things. Like, I need to be able to see what you're showing me, and I just can't see it here. So please take a stab at kind of reworking this case study. Don't make it all images. Show me a grid of the competitors instead of just listing out an endless list of like pros and cons, or as you saw it. Maybe show me some of the screenshots and like big red circle, this part sucks, or like a green circle, this part is really good. I was inspired by this part, because it's like a list of stuff doesn't really tell me too much, and it's a lot, and it's out of context. I don't understand it, all those things. Then you go to user personas. So I'm going to read this section on user personas real quick. And I get that this is for a course, I believe, like an online class. And so you were kind of asked to do personas, I'm assuming. I don't really know how often this happens in the real world. So what I would say is, give us, again, your personal journey here. Tell me how you felt going into user personas. Were you excited to do it? Do you think it really would help you? Did you think it was like, were you skeptical? Tell me about why you did it. Even if you were just assigned to do it, say that. The course instructed us to do personas next. Here's what I thought about that. And then here's the outcome. And the other thing that you'll hear often about personas when you're presenting them in a case study is you really need to make sure that you talk about those personas later in the case study as well. Like, keep coming back to them. Otherwise, like, why are you telling me about them? Why did you build the persona if you're not going to reference it? You've got some wireframes here. You've got a flow diagram. If I turn my head and hurt my neck, I can read here that it says high fidelity UI. I mean, these are cool designs from what I can see. There's some interesting, like, again, I think one of your biggest things, Fallon, is typography. Your type styles are all over the place, even in this design. So maybe something for you to be aware of, if you aren't already, is invest a little bit more in understanding typography and some of that consistency. But I really like some of the shadows here. You've got some really nice depth here with the book covers. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see some of these design. I think you've done a good job in terms of visuals with things like typography. Maybe some of the layout is a little iffy. But these are really cool. I wish I could see more of the screenshots. I wish that I could click to zoom in on them and compare them. That would be really helpful here. But otherwise, this is pretty cool. I think you've done a really good job with this case study. If we had more time, we're unfortunately running out of time. If we had more time, I would really want to dive deep into assessing these screenshots that I'm seeing of your final work. Meaning, I would want to think about your decisions to like click on a cover. What happens when you click on it? You go to like the book, and then what do you do there? Like, what options do you have? So the interaction design is something that I'd be looking to evaluate. You've also got some really interesting design decisions that I'm now kind of honing in on. Like, you've got this floating navigation on the bottom of the screen. Looks really aesthetically pleasing, but what's the rationale for that? Why does it need to be floating? And does it float over all of the content? If I come down here, I see a prototype, and yeah, it looks like it floats around. So what's the rationale behind that? It's not something you really see these days in apps. So breaking convention is fine if there's a strong rationale behind it. You've got this video prototype of the animation. Really, really cool job. I love this. Like I said earlier, if you have prototypes or videos of your work, you have to show it. It adds such a dimension to what you've done. And ultimately, this is what a recruiter or hiring manager will really take a look at, is your video preview, to see the comprehensive design experience and how you built it. And again, just a quick glance here, this looks like a really cool project. I think you did a good job. So if I kind of scroll down here, okay. If he's UX, shouldn't he focus on that and not UI? It depends. So UX design, you still have to do UI design to some element, right? And it's not going to hurt. If you're strictly focused on user experience, then yeah, like, don't worry too much about the UI. But if you're starting out, like this is a course project, we're going to want to see a comprehensive kind of experience here. And that means borrowing conventional patterns. Like if you are focused on UX, why did you design the UI? Why not just use like Material or iOS, right? Well, you took a stab at the visual. So that tells me that you are someone who cares about the craft and the visuals. And so I'm going to read into that, right? Okay, the last thing I want to say here for you, Fallon, we already said it, but I'll say it again. More. You said iterations are your magic, but I'm not seeing a lot of iteration, right? So let me go back here. Iteration's your superpower. You got to show that. Let me see just screens of iterations. We are out of time, but I want to take one last quick look at this other case study you've got. It's all images again. That's okay. Again, you're going through this course-based structure for your portfolio case study, which is research, ideation. You've got competitive analysis. I bet there's going to be a persona one in here. Yeah, you've got the personas. Like, this is fine. I really wish these boot camps and courses would stop kind of enforcing this, because it doesn't work. I'm not learning about you when you just check these boxes. So what I would say is kind of rework your case studies. If you have the time, if you're looking for a job, rework your case studies to tell your story. Tell me what you really experienced as you went through this project, what was hard, what felt better for you, that kind of stuff. The question asked, Tanner, would multiple iterations be too much for you guys to look at? Is it too overwhelming? No. And what I mean by that is, if we're thinking about this case study to be rebuilt to be text-based with some nice images and things, all I want to see is like 1 or 2 screenshots of a Figma file with 100 screens on it, right? Or whatever. 1 or 2 photos of just those iterations, those wireframes, those low fidelity mocks, anything at all that says iteration is going to be great. The alternative here, if you actually don't have that iteration, which is fine, the alternative is just remove this from your homepage. Like, you can say that you want to be more iterative, you want to do more exploratory work or something like that. Either show me the iteration that you have done and call it your superpower, or get rid of it as your superpower because you don't have anything to back that up. And this is a common thing we see all the time on portfolios. Designers say one thing, they got this big, lofty, exciting header on their homepage, and then their case studies drop the ball. They don't show that. So yeah, just a quick screenshot. Honestly, it doesn't need to be more than that. If you're saying iteration is just like, show me what different ideas you explored. And if you can do that, you're going to be fantastic. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. We are at the hour mark, and I wanted to just do an hour today. If you enjoyed this, if you found this at all helpful or entertaining, leave a thumbs up. Let me know on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, doesn't matter. If you'd like me to do more of these, if you want to just hang out and chat more about design, let me know that as well. Otherwise, I will see you all again another time. Thanks so much.